Staff orientation is a pretty routine process. When most managers talk about streamlining orientation, they usually mean cutting short the orientation process to cut down on costs, which typically is a bad idea. When we talk about streamlining orientation, what we're talking about is removing the wasted time spent on people who are failing to progress through orientation. What we want to do is diagnose that failure to progress as soon as we can, get employees all the help that they need, and employees that continue to fail to progress, address it in the best possible manner we can. This slide shows what I'm talking about when a new hire is failing to progress through orientation. You can see here the hours alone speak for themselves in terms of the manager hours and, of course, the clinical educator hours. Almost everything's at least doubled. The new hire hours easily doubled, and that stuff gets expensive. Normally we don't think that much about it because the person shows up for work and we're paying them anyway. But the salary costs alone, you can see here, are easily doubled, and we're talking a fair amount of money that's basically wasted on someone who is not progressing as quickly as we would like. Here's some common problems that we found in identifying the person that's failing to progress through orientation. Number one is preceptor consistency. Not too many departments have 8-hour shift preceptors that work 5 days a week that can stay with that new hire from start to finish in their orientation. Our departments typically have 12-hour people, so any new hire might have 2 to 3 preceptors during their time. During orientation, and the preceptors get hesitant to make judgments about the other preceptors and what the new hires covered through orientation. So orientation gets stretched out, and because the preceptors aren't really sure exactly what's been covered. So preceptor consistency is a big deal. The second thing is consistent documentation of progress. Most orientation guides really are skills checklists. We can track exactly what the employees learned or not learned or been shown or demonstrated. We usually do this, see one, do one, teach one routine. But when someone starts to fail to progress, a lot of times that's just anecdotal situations. It's not done consistently by the same preceptor, and many times it's just a couple of notes that really don't support any documentation or action on the employee who's failing to progress. So it becomes a real problem. The third barrier is a policy barrier. And now we don't take people's jobs lightly, and no, I don't want anybody taking our jobs lightly. But there is no such thing as the probationary status. It just doesn't exist anymore. You're either hired or you're not hired. So in the old days, new hires had some much higher expectations that were placed on them before they were removed from probationary status, but that just doesn't exist anymore. So now we need all the documentation issues that we have with regular employees that we do have on new hires, which is really fair. Again, I wouldn't want to take anybody's position lightly, as I wouldn't want anybody taking my position lightly at all. So what we have now is our orientation grading scale that we've put together, and this has worked wonderful for us. You see here we are grading on all the different things, behaviors that are exhibited by the employee: knowledge, patient care, general attitude, general comfort level, and initiative level. We broke it out between what's green is of course good, green's expected, yellow is when we're concerned, and red is when there's a real problem. And it works very well. You can read through this. What we expect of our employees is to hit the 3s or higher, to hit green, or of course progress to 4s and 5s. We expect them to be active learners that take an interest and a positive attitude in progressing through orientation quickly. The process we put in place for using this guide is, as stated, we review, it gets completed once a week with a single preceptor, twice a week if there's more than one. The clinical educator reviews these results with the preceptors and then gets with the new hire and reviews progress to make sure that they stay in the green, and if they're not, they develop a plan to get in the green. Again, you can kind of see here if they have a positive attitude, they're comfortable with the workflow, they perform the assigned work independently. Of course, this is dependent on where they're at in orientation. So the first week of orientation, people aren't going to be giving some workload that's way beyond what they've been taught how to do. So it all stays within where they're supposed to be at in the orientation skills checklist. This goes in concert with the orientation skills checklist. Now, yellow ratings. What happens when someone gets in the yellow? What happens is the clinical educator reviews that rating with the new hire and gives them coaching to get into the green. Yellow isn't the end of the world. You can see here they're falling below in knowledge level, below the preceptor expectations, need to be reminded on some issues. They're, let's say, in patient care, they're providing care with preceptor instruction beyond where they should be at. The preceptor should show them things once or twice or 3 times, but beyond that, they really should be able to handle that without instruction. Again, needing frequent reminders, things of that seem a little inappropriate for the stage of orientation, needing a lot of prompting. It's not the end of the world, but it needs to get better. And usually with the clinical educator getting with the new orientee, it's no big deal. They get right out of it. It works really well. Now, what happens with the red ratings? Now, people falling into the red almost always fail orientation. This is a big deal. And we handle this pretty severely. Red ratings, you're immediately halt the orientation process. Do not pass go, full stop. We're not going to continue this. This is a bad rating. We immediately pull the new hire in with the new hire, the clinical educator, and the manager or director, or in some cases both, depending on where the hospital, if they have a director or just a manager. And they immediately provide education that this employee needs to immediately cease the behavior that's landing them in the red rating and immediately get into the green rating. And when you look through here, this is what we're talking about. This is someone who lacks basic knowledge. We want to teach people how to work in our department, but we're not a nursing school. We're not going to go through basic nursing. When they start inhibiting the preceptor's ability to provide care, they're being so disruptive, whether they're argumentative or just a problem. They don't necessarily have to be, it doesn't have to be an angry situation, but they can just inhibit the ability to provide care by being too talkative or absent-minded or leaving the area or something. If they're refusing to perform patient care, all these things, full stop. We should not have to put up with this. We're not their parents. They're not our children. They need to be active learners, actively working through orientation to be successful in their role. And again, the final one, initiative level, when the preceptor gets so annoyed that they don't even want to see the new hire anymore because they're needing to prompt them so much. Hey, again, we're not here. These aren't children. These are paid adults, and they need to behave as such. So, once again, we immediately full stop orientation. We review these results, and we show them exactly what they have to do to get into the green. And they're expected to do that immediately, that day. Go back out on the floor, immediately be in the green, because once again, if you don't get out of the red, you can't continue with orientation. If you don't continue with orientation, you can't complete orientation. And if you don't complete orientation, you can't work in the department. So really, their job's kind of on the line here. The great thing with this is it provides full documentation, so the human resource department's happy. And really, this has been used very positively. I've had this in departments where someone landed in the red. We showed them immediately what's expected, and they did that. In fact, I have one department where the person's a real leader in the department, and it's very successful. The employee just needed to know exactly what the expectations were. We've used this in other departments where an employee was starting to fail, real nice person. It just was a bad fit. The department was not where the employee needed to be. There were too many expectations placed on the employee, and we were able to find a position in the hospital where they could be much more successful. They're very happy and doing great. Very good patient care. And it was really positive. So this is a very positive thing, that it helps the hospital, it helps the manager and the preceptors, and most of all, it helps the employee be successful. Please email any questions you have to me here at john@managingpartnersllc.com. And that's the website as well for any questions or concerns that you might have about this. Thanks very much, and let's get out there and make a difference.